Hey Nikin, welcome to day 1000.
Hi, glad to be here.
We stumble at Thailand, and I think just caught you for maybe a few minutes or you waiting for our Uber, and was really fascinated with what you and the team at Synapse is doing. The idea was to essentially ask you questions around your first 1000 days to extract insights on common questions, many founders have. I'm sure you've been through them as well. But before we hop into that, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself and what your company does?
So to give you a quick intro into what we do, we build marketing technology, right? So quite in the similar industry that you are in, but we handle the tech side of things for marketeers. So our main product is called Common Pool, which is the social listening tool. What we help brands do is to monitor their online conversations. That's user generated content, influence content, competitor content, and all of that from various sources, social media to Google reviews to websites, forums, and so on, and then analyze it for business insights. We also have a product called Mentioned by AI, which is generative engine optimization. So that's a hot new field that's emerging at the moment as well. Trying to optimize your brand presence for LLMs and answer engines. So what we do there is try to monitor all of these LLMs across the board from Gemini to ChatGPT to Perplexity, and then see where the brand gets mentioned and provide tips and guidance to brands and agencies to improve the brand presence. So pretty much think of it like SEO for the AI age.
Fantastic. I think you're creating something which is super relevant in times of today. And good luck with everything. Can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been running this for and what's the scale you are currently at?
So, um, so we've been running this since 2021. So that's about 4 years now. And Mentioned by AI, of course, just started this year towards mid this year in June. We launched in June, and Common Pool, of course, was there from the very beginning, and we've grown quite a bit since. And right now we are expanding into the Southeast Asian region. So we are based in Sri Lanka, if that wasn't a bit clear earlier. Um, and so we are a very small market here as well. The Sri Lankan market is just 20 million people, relatively smaller amount of brands and so on. So we've exhausted our capacity in Sri Lanka, and that's why we are actually moving out of Sri Lanka. So for Common Pool right now, our main focus is the Southeast Asian markets as well as the Middle East and North African markets. For Mentioned by AI, we've always started in Europe and Australasia as well as the US as our target market. So it's a very new product there that's growing quite fast, and we see a lot of potential in Mentioned by AI, but still our main product and our main driver is Common Pool, which is mainly based off of Sri Lankan clients, but also now slowly starting to get into the CS space as well.
Very interesting. So, you're attacking, I think, a global clientele sitting out of Sri Lanka. And I think you've crossed the threshold or the milestone of the first 1000 days. So congrats on that. Let me take you all the way back into, probably your first month. The biggest challenge founders face is getting customers. I'd love to know how you got your first customers.
Right. So um, let me give you a bit of background as to what our first year was like or first months were like. So you might know that Sri Lanka was in a deep economic crisis back then. We had a government overthrow, and then there was a lot of chaos. There was fuel shortages. There's COVID, that was just ending off, and there was a lot of crisis and chaos in the country. But with that chaos also came a bit of opportunity because there was a lot of issues in terms of dealing with foreign businesses or for foreign software providers and so on, as well as lack of capital to put into all of these expensive tools out there. So what we initially saw is that there's a market gap here where we can use this crisis to our advantage and see whether providing a localized tool which works very well for the local niche market at an affordable price as well, of course, for the requirements of our domestic market would work. And that paid off. So our first clients came in, I think, a few months later. And And then we've been growing ever since then. And I think what we've also seen is from that very initial stage, we've always tried to keep true to our roots and try to localize as much as possible. That localization is paying off now when we're going into other markets as well, where we can adopt and learn from the lessons we learned.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you got your first clients? Like what channels were you using? What strategies were you using?
Right. So initially it was mainly networking, right? So that's LinkedIn marketing, outbound, through personal contacts and so on. That's, in my opinion, for a B2B product, that's sort of the way you need to go for your very first clients to get proof of concept at the very least. And then once we got the very first clients, it's been mainly, again, still LinkedIn has been a very huge driver for our growth. So we do LinkedIn outreach, LinkedIn cold outreach, but also warm outreach through networking events and so on. So I'd say our core marketing strategy has been through LinkedIn for the past 4 years. But right now we are looking at diversifying it. So since your question was towards the very early stage, it's definitely been LinkedIn.
Right. So I think cold outreach on LinkedIn, DMing, I think everybody you know that hey, I have something
Ex-
interesting, you may be keen. I think is, really what helps you get, started as a company.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
you mentioned, you're in a B2B space. Initially, it's very hard to sell to B2B because there's no trust. They have a buying committee. They are not decisions made impulsively like a consumer. I may try a new chocolate, I may try a new dress. I will not
Yeah.
just randomly try a new tool which I need to get an approval on and I'll be accountable for, etc. So how did you really build that trust if cold outreach was your strategy in B2B?
Right. So there are a few methods. Say one thing is we were quite lucky at the very early stage. We got a investment round from one of the largest companies in Sri Lanka. So that sort of gave us a bit of backing and bit more meat when we went and met with the client. Second thing, I think what we told them is, hey, look, all of your current vendors aren't accessible to you. So give us a shot because of the economic crisis and the situation that we were in. So we use that as an opportunity so that they could give us a shot and see whether it works. Give them a short term free instead of locking them down for long term contracts. And then once they got used to the product and were happy with it, they would continue to use it. And then we are very grateful to our first few clients as well, because then we could use them as a springboard to get more clients and expand as well.
Makes sense. I think removing friction is a great strategy. I think that's what you did. So it becomes really hard to kind of say no. In our first year or two, we did a lot of free work, and it's just easy. It's very hard for people to say no. When I'm like, I'll give you value for free, at least try me. I think the strategy,
Exactly.
especially in B2B, always I tell people is to focus on the second sale. Don't focus on the first sale
Yeah,
because if you focus on the second sale and if you're in B2B, you will have repeat. So give the first for free.
that's true. And for us,
Uh,
especially since we are a recurring revenue generator, so since
right.
it's a subscription, it makes sense to lower the value or lower the cost of converting at the very
Correct.
beginning and then get them on board to a subscription.
Correct. Absolutely. Or now jump into, how founders sometimes if you raise capital especially have a lot of pressure to grow fast, right? They have to ship products, sorry, features and products. They have to kind of figure out their go to market, get more customers and just grow. In that entire process you end up making some spends which you regret, you know and I wanted to try and ask you, are there some spends in the first 1,000 days you made you wished you hadn't?
So I'd say there were few. So one thing that you'd spend on quite a lot is hiring as well. So you need to be a bit conservative with your hiring because if you do it a bit too fast, you could reduce your runway, and that might be something that you'd want to keep a check on. Another thing is, I think we personally didn't do this quite a lot since we were very conservative. But something that I've seen a lot of people do, and something we were very careful not to do, is overspend on our ads and our marketing efforts. Keep it as conservative as possible whilst getting the maximum ROI. That was sort of a goal because even though we did get funding, it wasn't a very large amount. Especially looking at the Sri Lankan market, it's a very small amount of funding availability. So it's a relatively small amount. So we had to make do with what we had. So we were in a very conservative state. Other than that, I think other than the hiring and the marketing spend, I would say one of the core things that we we did focus on is our customer service side, because like you mentioned, since we are in the B2B space, making sure that we manage and maintain that relationship with our customers tend to be the reason why we get the second deal or get a renewal. And that's something that we focus quite heavily on to this date as well. And that's something where we spend a lot of money and effort into, even
Right.
though it's not
But if I can
directly
just
marketed.
interject, Nikin, like if I can just interject, like I think you mentioned hiring is definitely one area which I think you tried to be very careful on along with spends. But are there any spends you made which you were like, I wish I didn't?
Right. So I wouldn't say there was anything specific that we we made that I'd say I wish I wouldn't. Right. So I'm a very strong believer that everything you do happens for a reason,
Hmm.
and whatever is done, and you probably made the best decision at that point, based on the available info and so on that you had.
Your suggestion is that a lot of people hire too many people or too expensive people very soon, and a lot of
Yeah.
people end up spending a lot of money on Meta and LinkedIn without really understanding repeat and retention, right? So I think, well, that's some solid advice. I want to now jump into the last part, right, Nikin, which is underrated and overrated channels. The channels are really important for your go-to market, and you have to experiment to conclude what's the right channel for you because it is so contextual to your business and your market. Could you share any underrated channel and an overrated channel?
Yeah. Speaking of underrated ones, I'd say is marketing on LinkedIn and so on, but not directly through like DMs, right? And so, of course, when you say outbound or like cold outreach on LinkedIn, what comes to mind is DMing people, connecting with people, growing a network. Of course, that's important, and that's something that we've done from day one. But what we've been realizing recently is that commenting on posts or engaging with the community on platforms like LinkedIn. So LinkedIn works for us because we're a B2B product, but that might be different for a B2C brand where it might be a different platform. And we are starting to see that even platforms like Reddit or even Twitter do have a good say, where if you engage with the community and build that trust and engagement with them, that will give you returns. It's not something that works in the short run. It's not
Mhm.
something that's immediate, like ads maybe, but it's something if you continually do, it can improve your brand positioning. And also, one of the reasons that we started mentioned by AI is also to get on top of LLMs and so on. So what one thing that we are seeing with that product, especially with the clients that we work with, is that engaging and creating content on, let's say, LinkedIn or Reddit or Twitter tends to improve your presence on platforms like ChatGPT as well. So it has a double effect as well, where you improve your social media and community presence, but you also improve your future search rankings as well.
Right. And any overrated channels?
And overrated channels, I'd say one thing that we've seen is that email marketing hasn't worked as well as we'd hoped. So email marketing is something that's done by every business. It's something that you cannot live without. But also when we've tried it, it hasn't really worked as well as we hoped as well. What we see is that the efficiency of email marketing has gone down over the ages, and now with all the spam filters and all of the detections and all of the different companies doing the same sort of email marketing, it's very difficult to stand out, and that sort of causes a bit of friction there, and therefore reduces the efficacy of it.
Right, right. No, I think very insightful. You've been through a similar journey where for us, content marketing on the right platform is proving to be much better than cold outreach and email, which in fact was our number one driver in our earlier days. But I think other than the platforms also maturing up, I feel as you mature as a business, you start wanting much better quality in your lead pool. And that quality is what's usually lacking in the email channel, which when it is inbound is far, far different from an intent standpoint. So
That's true.
absolutely agree with what you had to say. As a parting thought, I would love for you to share, I think the hardest thing the entrepreneur needs to go through, which is to actually get through the 1,000 days, right? So if I'm somebody who's just started my company and I know one of my biggest milestones is to survive for the next 1,000 days and do my first 3 years, what should I keep in mind?
Right. I think so. Let me just give you a bit of a lengthier answer for this because there's something that I think every day, right? So a lot of the people, or a lot of the founders tend to, bring out the rosy picture and tell how great it is, or how you can stop doing a 9 to 5 when you become a founder, right? But I think you can tell from first-hand experience as well that when you become a founder, no longer 9 to 5 because it's 24/7. So you need to put in all of your effort. There are going to be days where you would feel like, what's the point of all this? There are going to be days where you're going to not not know how you're going to continue for the next month in terms of runway, and there are going to be days in which people that are going to question what you're doing. But you need to stay strong, and you need to always stick to what your goals are and what your plan is, and deal with any challenges that come head on. So what I have to say is, put in all your effort, and deal with whatever that comes your way.
Absolutely. I think couldn't agree more here as well. So that's essentially it, Nikin. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good time.
Had a great time. Nice to meet you again. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Likewise, likewise. And
All right.
for everybody who's tuned in so far, thank you so much for joining. If you'd like to hear another founder like Nikin, please subscribe to our channels. Bye bye.